Good morning, good afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining this discussion. We're really excited to be here. This discussion is presented by Digital Ship and Orca AI in collaboration, and we're here to talk about navigational resilience and what that means for the industry, and look at practical steps that industry can take to improve navigational resilience. But first off, kind of what do we mean by that term? It's our view that maritime operations are becoming much more complex and much more vulnerable. Sea lanes are becoming more congested. There's a whole host of different actors looking to influence how maritime operations work. I'm looking at some stats from the last 12 months. In Q2 of 2025, 13,000 vessels reported getting a spoofed GPS position. And so we are now in a world where it's really, really important for those on board and those ashore to look at how to improve the resilience of the fleet and ensure that when all of these interferences, whether it's weather, whether it's intentional actions by another actor, whether it's just the nature of global trade, require quick thinking, that everyone understands what they need to do to keep a vessel safe and keep a vessel performing. I'm really excited to be able to introduce a panel of experts that we're going to have this discussion with, but they're not the only ones having the discussion. It's also yourselves. So you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom panel here, there is a Q&A box. If you click to open that up, you will see on the Q&A box the ability to submit a written question. We have dedicated time at the end of this session for written questions. And we also have, if something really interesting comes in, I may ask it a little bit earlier. What always happens with these types of sessions is very few people ask questions right at the beginning, and then far too many people ask questions in the last 2 or 3 minutes for us to be able to answer them. So my encouragement to you would be that if you want to make a comment, ask a question, contribute to the discussion in some way, put it into that Q&A box and send it to us as soon as you think of it. And we'll be sure to make dedicated time at the end for it. But let me bring our panel of experts into this conversation. I think people are always better giving their own introductions than me doing it. So what I'm going to do is ask each of our three speakers to introduce themselves. Panagiotis, let's start with you. Could you just tell us a bit about yourself, your role in the organization you work for?
Hi, good morning to everyone. Really glad to be part of this discussion and contribute at the best possible extent. My name is Panagiotis Drossos. I'm the Managing Director of Capital Ship Management, presently operating a tanker fleet of 25 vessels, some more, some less, in accordance to the commercial activity of the group. And I'm a captain. I have 9 years navigation experience, let's say, and another 3 years as a captain on board. So I would be more than glad to contribute in this era and looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Panagiotis. It's great to have you here. Alexandros?
Hello from my side as well. I'm Alexandros Politis Kalenteris. I'm the Deputy Chief Operating Officer of TMS Cardiff Gas. I'm leading the gas division within the wider DMS group. We control in our gas division 22 LNG and LPG carriers in the water today, plus another 10 under construction as we speak, and which will be delivered to us over the next 3 years. And a wider group, of course, of TMS, including new builds under construction, controls approximately 200 ships of all types and sizes. I have been with this company the past 11 years, and overall I have 28 years of experience in the maritime transportation sector. Looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Alex. Dor?
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. My name is Dor Raviv, co-founder and Chief Technology Officer at Orca AI. At Orca AI, we have been working relentlessly to put AI on board the commercial ships for the sake of improving the safety of navigation. Happy to be in this panel and discuss how AI can help and augment the safety of navigation.
I've got a whole load of questions that I want to ask, but I would absolutely encourage you. I don't know exactly what you want to know, so if you want to contribute, ask a question, then please make sure you do. Um, let's just start with what's changed in the operating environment. And perhaps, Alexandros, I'll start with you. You're operating an LNG fleet. Safety margins are extremely tight. But from your leadership perspective, what's changed over the last sort of 5 years or so about how global trade and maritime trade operates that um, has forced you to kind of look at this issue of navigational resilience?
Yes. So first of all, the area of the navigation and operations is the most sensitive one across the maritime ecosystem, since this is where the majority of the most serious potential incidents might occur. Incidents that might pose risks for human life, environmental disasters, type of risks that can bring even a company down. So the focus is relentless on that field. We cannot afford to be relaxed or complacent. The last 5 years, actually the last decade, I would say, we have seen that the amount of ships in the energy sector has increased in an exponential way. The fleet has almost doubled, and the fleet from, let's say, 400 ships to more than 700 ships today. And we expect that this number will exceed 1,000 ships by the end of this decade. So that adds to the risks, because the experience from the side of the seafarers as well as the office is reduced. It's not like in the past. At the same time, we have to take care of welfare considerations, right? So duration of the contract decreases. And all these means that the risks for navigational incidents become higher and higher. More traffic in the various waterways, more ships, less experience per unit, where unit means the seafarer. So in such an environment, visible and felt leadership across the companies should be the number one priority, I would say, because this is what drives the safety culture. It's impossible not to have some near misses, but this is where people learn from. But the most important thing is to be able to identify them quickly, share the knowledge, and avoid actual incidents going forward. And this is where our decision to invest in new tools, new platforms, digital solutions, using AI increasingly, has been derived from, right? I mean, it's a top priority. It's a fast-moving world. We have to share knowledge. We have to share data. And this is what will be driving, at least from our side, the leadership over the next few years, and how we will monitoring how the company performs and how the fleet becomes safer and more efficient at the same time.
That's super interesting. I think your point on sort of that it's impossible not to have near misses of some description, and that's how everyone learns and improves. I think that's a really valuable one. And Panagiotis, I'd be interested to get your take on that. When you take that into account, what does kind of operational excellence look like to you within your fleet at Capital?
By fully supporting Mr. Kalenderis' statements and approaches, from our side, operational excellence is sustaining what we have achieved until now by utilizing new technology, absorbing from new technologies and AIs in order to feed the system with more data and being able to evaluate the data collected, aiming for the absolute KPI of zero incident, which it's quite difficult, and we are aiming all of us towards that direction. However, near misses will continue to arise, and there where the team sure and on board makes the difference, collaborating and sharing towards that direction.
I think that is really interesting, because I think often it's easy to think in quite woolly terms about what excellence looks like. But I love that you've actually got a clear KPI of absolute zero harm incidents that you're working towards. Dora, I'd be curious, is that something you've seen across the industry in your interaction with lots of different ship owners? How do you see this approach compared to what else you see?
Thank you, Nick. So I'm super excited about the discussion over here. I would say that when we started Orca AI almost 8 years ago, everyone thought and were convinced that AI is going to come and replace us all humans, basically, and everything that we do. Now, look at us now. It's 2026. We have two well-respected industry leaders in shipping industry talking about data-driven KPIs, monitoring, transparency, AI to augment operations. This is unheard of. Just see how advanced the shipping industry has become from talking about cargo and time in port and port operations to talk about data, quality of data, insights, KPIs. This is the whole new generation of owners that respect, understand, and value what AI and data can do to their organization. And this is what excites me the most. As a company that deals in AI and data on a daily basis, the fact that you have such an industry that some may perceive as more traditional is actually at the forefront of technology, at the forefront of adopting technology, and many people don't really understand it. So 5 years ago, it was some sort of a magic. Is it going to replace us? What is AI at all? Today, ship owners understand the value of data-driven decisions, and data-driven organization can actually boost their resilience to an ever-changing world of risks. And this is, in my opinion, the most interesting part of this panel. Thank you.
Alexander, I'd be interested in your response to that. Because I agree, if you wind the clock back 5 years, there was definitely a perception, if not a reality, that ships were operated more by gut feel than by really data-driven decisions. So what's your view? What prompted that change to become very, very data-driven?
Okay. It is indeed a conservative, or it used to be at least a conservative industry. Nobody doubts that. The issue is that we didn't have some tools in our hands to move forward. So I would say that a breakthrough evolution that has been evident the past 5 years is the huge improvement in the connectivity equipment that we have on board the ships. So improved VSAT infrastructure and mostly LEO technology, especially Starlink, that has been implemented across the global merchant fleets at a fascinating speed. I think today approximately half of the global fleet has Starlink installed on board. In the past, we needed more than 10 years to have such a breakthrough. Now it happened within 2 or 3 years, right? So this created the fundamentals that we needed in order to be able to exchange data seamlessly between the ship, the office, and vice versa. Because without that, it would have been impossible to discuss about AI, data exchange, data analysis, everything. So I believe that this was the major driver. And of course, there is a new generation in the shipping industry that supports this trend and has enabled us to work towards that direction.
Panagiotis, I'm curious. We've had this big technology shift that Alexander talks about, and we are now able to use these tools. But just getting access to this data doesn't necessarily translate to different behaviors on board the ship. And I know at Capital you place a strong emphasis on human element and on training. So how do you go about when you bring this sort of technology in? How do you go about making sure that it actually kind of reinforces seamanship and good judgment rather than sort of replacing it?
Yeah, it's matter of communication. So when you communicate to your community that it's an aid, it hasn't come for replacing or judging or blaming. A blame culture is something that, from our perspective, is one of the most significant threats of an attempt to have a progress in technology. So how you introduce it to your working force, how it's presented to your working force, and at the end, I'm more than sure that with the proper communication, all shore and on board communities are absorbing and hugging these initiatives. So because it's it's a development towards excellence. So I don't think that anyone will dispute that.
And Alexandros, what was your experience like bringing these sorts of tools in? Was there resistance to it? And if so, how do you overcome that?
Nick, inevitably there is some resistance initially with any change that takes place within any industry, including shipping. Older captains usually were more hesitant to accept these new tools. I mean, it's not like blaming them. It's it's a huge change in their day-to-day activities, right? I mean, when you're used to do a certain type of operations and reporting for the past 2 or 3 decades, it's not easy to adjust to some new tools that may be monitoring the situation. You feel like Big Brother is around you. So I fully agree with what Mr. Drosos said. It's a matter of communication, right? We have to change the culture. This is what we have to do, and persuade the people that it's not about substituting them. It's about making them better. Because if we create a safer industry with less incidents and a better optimized performance for our fleet, then the captains will also get the credits for it, right? So it's not a matter of blaming and substitution, but providing them with the tools to become better. It took us a few campaigns across the fleet, a few sessions within officers' conferences where there is a wide audience and we can present such tools in a more effective fashion. A lot of visits, leadership visits on board the ships from all of our managers and directors. And slowly, the DNA, the culture is changing. I mean, initially, maybe 1 out of 2 captains was hesitant with these new tools. In the last, during the last polls, anonymous polls that we do on board, it's more than 90% acceptance rate. So it's quite impressive. Quite impressive, I would say. But communication, as Panagiotis said, is the #1 element. How you will provide the message to the people on board.
And I guess once you've communicated that, them actually seeing the tangible benefits as well. So what are some of the changes that have happened on board or possibly have happened ashore once you roll out these sorts of technologies that mean people go from 50% acceptance to 90%?
First of all, they can see in practice that whenever some near miss occur, which, as we said, is inevitable, we don't have a blame game or dispose those officers. But on the contrary, we proceed with extra trainings. We can provide mentoring so that they become actually better. So they saw in practice that there was not a blame game culture involved in this new technology adoption. Secondly, sharing data between the fleet, across the fleet, has helped the rest of the officers as well. So whenever we have such cases, the ability that we have now to share those data in a seamless fashion and very fast helps us avoid the reoccurrence in the future. So they have seen that this ecosystem is developing like that, is building up like that, and they understand that it is in their benefit actually, because officers, and I'm sure that Panagiotis will agree on that, officers today, the crew on board, can be overwhelmed very easily. Increased traffic, too much regulations, they have too many things in their heads. So having tools that make their life easier is very valuable for them. And they understood, I believe during the process, they understood that this is the end goal and not substituting them. And they have, they have endorsed it.
I think it's one thing to talk about then there not being a blame culture, but actually implementing a no blame culture, I think is a challenging thing. And Panagiotis, I know that safety culture is something that you take very seriously at Capital. How have you been able to kind of implement that safety culture in a way that really works? Because I think that the challenge of doing it is hard.
Culture. Culture is the first and the last word in our promotion, let's say, related to safety. For us, culture determines our behavior when no one is seeing. So if you don't have, or if you don't promote, the leadership team doesn't promote the proper culture towards the captains, the navigators, will not have the proper results. So without a doubt, the culture and what is promoted through the initiative, whatever that might be, management review, leadership visits, needs a clear definition. We seek for improvement. Continuous improvement is something that, from our perspective, will always be in our mouth. And from then on, support to our crew members and making them understand, since they are the one that working in the most severe element of our business. So they need the proper support, and I don't think that and the time required to absorb or take them out from their comfort zone, as Alexander have said, we need to support them at the best possible extent, aiming for the excellence.
And Dor, kind of building on that point around support, I'm interested in how you use these tools to support people to make better decisions and not sort of take the decision making power away. Because you could tell kind of from Alexandros' comments earlier about the sort of 50% acceptance rate to begin with, that there is a perception across the industry, I think possibly among seafarers, that when you start to bring these tools in, is it Big Brother watching? Is it the decision-making authority being eroded from the master? So how do you make sure that these tools actually kind of act as support?
So we live today in a kind of a new world where everyone are expecting of us to be maybe between 2 to 10x better. Why do I say that? I say that because we can see AI is being adopted across basically every industry, from software development to computer vision, medical, and basically I would say the fundamental levels is how do we process multiple amounts of data in all sorts of frequencies, rates, and noises. And I think that what AI came to do here in this world today, this new type of revolution everyone are talking about, is the ability of us humans to utilize AI in ways that benefit us, helps us understand better from knowledge consumption. Like today, I can, instead of read 10 articles, I can ask AI to summarize those same 10 articles for me. And boom, I consume that knowledge. All the way to program a new software. You see solo entrepreneurs today build their whole companies out of their bedroom. So you have these tools that basically augment and boost your capabilities. Now, in seafaring or watchkeeping, you encounter very much the similar challenges. You have numerous data points from different navigation sensors. You have new regulations, new information about the port and the weather and different targets, your own vessels' characteristics. Everything is dynamic and changing and shifting all the time. Now, if you do that, first of all, you need to be extremely competent and extremely professional. But then you do it over and over and over again in every port, all day, all the time, in every shift. And this is eroding. This is challenging. You know, this is something that sits on younger generation seafarers that are used to consume knowledge, none like their previous generations. But the same paradigm of bombarding them with information from different sensors and expecting them to outperform in this challenging environment, you have more targets and more ships and more regulations, is actually eroding. So the challenge here is how do we go hand in hand with these people from this industry and help them understand that AI is not here to replace anyone, because we know it cannot replace. We know it cannot just be us. Even here in this webinar, we are not sending our avatars to speak instead of us, right? We have our own human knowledge, understanding, context, all those things that, you know, computer science cannot mimic, emotions, etc. Now, what it can do for you, it can take multiple data sources and summarize them all for you to gain a better understand, to get an advantage over your previous self. by knowing better what's going on. And this is, I would say, the name of the game of, if you want to introduce a new tool to such a new environment, you go hand in hand with the user, with the client. You explain them over and over again. What are the benefits? It's not here to replace. It has disadvantages. It doesn't know everything, and it will never will. But what it can do, it can help you be a better version of yourself, quicker thoughts, faster reactions, lower risk, and more confident of your decisions. And once you have these AI agents helping you in very small types of missions along the day, you'll start seeing a version of yourself which is not 2 times better, but 5 times better. And I think that in today's competitive landscape, with the lack of competent seafarers, this is a global shortage. We need to make sure we help our seafarers gain the tools to excel at their tasks while reducing the risk and being on time as professionals. This is my thoughts on this.
I don't care how good AI gets. An avatar door will never beat the real thing. I'm certain of that. Alexandros, just building on that, Door talked about taking data from lots of different sources, and being able to learn from huge data sets. And I think what's interesting is obviously a ship can be a hive of data on its own, but a fleet of ships, and I think you said towards the end of the decade you hope to be somewhere near 1,000 ships, is an enormous pool of data to learn from. So how do you go about taking learnings from a single ship, whether that's a near miss report or an incident, and applying that across the entire fleet?
The biggest advantage of these new tools, platforms that are in our hands today is the ability they have to share data across large number of ships, offices, employees, named, whatever you wish. So it has this accelerates, let's say, this sharing of data, because otherwise, Nick, you are right. I mean, too many solutions, too much data coming towards people, whether they are on board or at the office. So at some point you get lost, right? And you don't know what to do. And this is exactly where also Door's point is important, that by utilizing those tools properly, we can have a summary and efficient analysis of the multiple data sources presented to us every day, and we can share with the rest of the fleet in a seamless fashion. So let's say that we have a near miss or a minor case on board one of our ships, we can now find out at the office in a much faster way. Maybe sometimes in the past, minor cases would not even have been reported to the office and the office would have been blind, right? Now, this is not the case any longer, which enables us to intervene faster, share the same data, lessons learned, as we say, across our fleet, make the knowledge deeper and avoid recurrence in the future. So the biggest, I would say, advantage of those platforms is the ability, they are enablers of sharing the data across our fleet in a much faster way. And when we say sharing the data, we mean sharing the knowledge, right? And mitigating the risk. So this is also a huge enabler for our office personnel, because as I said, in the past, they could have been blind. Now, by knowing what's going on, they can pounce exactly on the weaknesses and not waste time across things that we might have been outperforming in any case. So I believe this is the beauty of it. And we will continue investing on that area.
I think what's interesting about that is that everyone works with limited resources, right? So it's really about understanding where to focus your time, where to focus your resources. Panagiotis, I'd be curious from you, where do you see, when you see the kind of common areas of performance deviation that you see coming up time and again, and yeah, what's the kind of process you go through to go from getting the insight to actually making sure the improvement sticks?
With the utilization of such technology, we are able to develop our human resources accordingly. What I wanted to say that we have navigators on board. It's bridge that doesn't mean that they will react the same way in the similar occasions. So through our training center and training development, we can collect the data that are required and reinforce our working units properly, as the sense that each individual might not need the same training. So it's areas that we open our eyes in areas that we never believed before. Without a doubt, I totally agree with Alexandros. The 90s, where I joined the cruise, they say what happens on board stays on board, doesn't exist anymore. So it's not something that we take it negatively. This is opening our eyes that Mr. Politz Alexandros have said it's an improvement and development era that we hug and we support accordingly.
And I guess taking the same question, but to a wider approach to all, because how many ships are using Orca today? What is it that you see across the entire industry? Because you've got different ship owners, different fleet types. Where do you see the kind of biggest improvements can be had?
So I think that when you talk about AI, data, and large fleets, you would like to focus on very, very, very simple KPIs. This is what we do. Okay, so while there are thousands of considerations when deploying these types of technologies on board, from performance criteria, how the computer vision works, etc. We decided to focus on two KPIs. One is the reduction of close encounter events. This is like the most important KPI. A close encounter event has some statistical correlation with, God forbid, a collision. So the idea here is to reduce those as much as possible. Now, what are close encounter events? This is a very broad term. What we do, we go hand in hand with every company that we operate with, and we start asking a lot of questions. What is the safety policy for the company in open waters navigation? What types of targets in in coastal navigation? Which scenarios are more interesting and less interesting? What happens if we miss an event? All those types of questions are being formulated into this one KPI, which is the reduction of close encounter events. And then we start measuring, right? So after we conduct training to the crew and training to the office, and we use basically a data sharing platform we call Fleet View. So you can review these specific KPIs and investigate and go and filter by location and call regs and types of targets and time and date, etc. What we see, this underlying all around the fleets, from car carriers to LNGs, cruise ships and cargo vessels, all across the industry, over a period of time, you see this graph of a dramatic reduction in close encounter events. Now, it is very hard to prove causality. Like, did the fact that I put Orca AI on board actually reduce the risk? This is a question that we dabble with every day, right? But it's very hard to prove because we are not actually on board every vessel, seeing how they react to every alert on the system. But what we are able to do with the rule of large numbers is we look on a compounding database of more than 1,000 commercial ships today equipped with Orca AI. And across the board, every industry, every ocean, every shift, every type of vessel, and of course, everything is done anonymously. We don't know who the captains are. We see a reduction of the close encounter events by roughly 50% from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Every quarter, you see a deduction. Now, you may say it's better safety culture, it's better training, better crews, better everything. But what we see is that when we always start, we see the numbers are kind of steady, and at the specific number, I don't recall the number, we normalize that number to 1,000 nautical miles. Why arbitrary number? Just to make sure that we kind of filter out all the underlyings, all the anomalies, the tops and the bottoms. But we kind of normalize to 1,000 nautical miles quantum, okay? Quantize that. And then we look over a period of time, open waters, coastal navigation, congested waters, reduction of close encounter events. The second KPI is the increase of the average minimum distance, meaning that the vessels equipped with the system actually maintain greater distance on an average encounter. And again, we see an increase of that number. So by combining those two KPIs, although there is so much data analysis done at the background, this is what we come to the management with. And this is the benefit, right? You want to make your fleet safer. We don't know if it's because OrcaAI is on board or not, but this is the data. And the data is tangible. It's something you cannot argue. You just see, because if you want to investigate, we allow you using our product, the Fleet View, to investigate each and every close encounter event. And we are talking about, tens of thousands of close encounter events every month on a fleet of more than 1,000 ships. Now, not all of them are of high risk. Some of them are, just a CPA of 1.9 nautical miles, TCP of 19 minutes in open water. This is still a violation of the safety policy. We, of course, try to make our best to filter out these outliers, these types of close encounter events, and focus on the higher priority. And higher priority, we still see a reduction of close encounter events. So this is the way to kind of convey the message to the owners, to the users, that this system has value.
It's really interesting to kind of hear you talk about using statistical data to reduce risk, because it strikes me as that's something that the insurance industry has done for decades. And I'm just curious, Panagiotis and Alexandros, how do you see the kind of approach to P&I and hull and machinery assurance changing when you start to take these kind of data-driven approaches to risk? Do you see it changing at all?
Rather slow change, I would say. There are a couple of providers who have started promoting situational awareness solutions in a way that creates a win-win environment for both the insurance providers as well as the shipping companies. So in other words, subsidizing the installation of such systems, contributing to the subscription rate that shipping companies pay. So in this way, showing in reality to the customers, to us, to the shipping companies, that transparency is being supported, right? It's clear to me that by having a transparent environment where the insurance companies have access to data collected by such platforms, which we have in any case, that can create a safer industry. And that can enhance, boost the efforts that are underway from the industry, from inside the industry, to promote this transparency, right? So transparency, in other words, should not be penalized, right? Having such tools and having the insurance providers or any other regulatory body trying to find ways not to compensate shipping companies for some damages or whatever, other cases. Here, it's clearly to me a win-win. This has not been widespread across the insurance universe, but I believe we're going towards that direction. It's a matter of resolving the liability issue here. So in case something happens, who is to blame from the legal standpoint, who should be compensating the other party? But the first steps have already been taken, Nick. There are a couple of well-known P&I clubs that support this with certain, let's say, financial motivation measures. So I believe that over the next few years, this will be widespread across the sector. It has to be.
I think that point of not penalizing the industry for becoming more transparent, I think, is super important. It's the same way you have a no blame culture for the crew. You need to find ways to ensure that those who take the lead and become more transparent don't get penalized.
If I may add here, the fact that with these tools, with the implementation of these tools, we create a safer industry has to be recognized by the insurance providers. And since they will have theoretically less insurance cases where they should compensate us, the customers, I believe we are entitled to share some reductions in the premium that we are paying, right? So this is why I say it's a win-win, safer industry for them, so less compensation packages being paid. better rates, better lower premium for us as customers. So this is how it should work.
And Panayotis, I can see you nodding, so I assume you
Yeah.
agree, but what's your take?
Nothing more, nothing less. Alexander has covered the whole area. Without a doubt, being transparent and having a win-win scenario is the fair recipe, let's say. So I don't have anything more to add. From our end, we are doing what it's prudent, what we should do. We're doing our part. So the rest of the parts in the industry needs to do their part as well.
And I guess the ultimate outcome of that, right, would be some kind of regulation around this stuff, because radar was invented and then went through something of an adoption curve, and then it became mandatory. Same with ECDIS. Dora, I know you've been working in the kind of Japanese market, where I think things are perhaps a little bit more forward-looking in terms of support from the flag states and all of that sort of stuff. So could you just explain a bit about the work you've done in the Japanese market, and how you see that Japan as a country kind of sees the approach of these kind of tools?
Yes. So I think that, Japan realized that they have an issue of hiring competent seafarers for their domestic seafaring business. Japanese young people have today more options than ever before. They can work in a high tech. They can work in some of the best gaming companies in the world, like Nintendo, Sony, Toshiba, state of the art companies. Now, why would a Japanese a working class person go and work in a shipping industry, which is, again, it's not the case, but it is still perceived by young people as disconnected environment, low-tech equipment, hard work, remote from home, tedious work, mundane work, this type of operations, where they have better options. So the Japanese government understood that if they are not doing anything to shake this business, in the next 20 years, they will be in shortage of ability to deliver goods inside the country in domestic waters. Now, for Japan, they cannot really export all the trade externally, because in Southeast Asia, in South North Asia, they have, I wouldn't call them adversaries, but they don't have a lot of proper allies. The Chinese and Koreans, they have bad blood history with these folks. So what can the Japanese do? Japanese government decided that it wants to kind of refurbish shipping and brand it as a new high-tech environment to work in. And the way to do that would be to take all the Japanese related shipping companies, but not just shipping companies, it's manufacturers, OEMs, tier ones, all these shipyards, all these organizations together to work together towards building something new, which is world's first full autonomous commercial ship. Now, the fact that it's autonomous doesn't mean it is unmanned. It will be manned with less people. Why? Because technology will come and help conduct multiple types of tasks, from docking to autonomous navigation and collision avoidance. It consolidated multiple vendors like Furuno, Japan Marine United, Imabari Shipyard, all those companies together to build something new, which has also what they call the social implementation of autonomous ships, which starts with education in school, with simulations and AI and high-tech environment. Now, one of those organizations, which is the local regulatory body, the class society, Class NK, also has a lot of pressure from the government to assure and qualify new types of technologies. And this is exactly the part of collaboration that we in Orca AI, as a chosen vendor in this collaboration, had to meet. So we had to, in I would say, a language barrier, explain what are the performance of computer vision and how to collect data at scale and label it and benchmark it, evaluate it, deploy it on board. What are the pros and cons and how to work with it? What are the mismessage? How to do sensor fusion? All those types of novel technologies that today are usually saved for the automotive industry or the aviation industry to talk about the ability of it to work under different stresses, different environments in maritime domain. And once we got the Japanese class on board with us, they understood a little bit more about the pros and cons of this technology. At the end of the process, which was tedious 1.5 year long process, we got what's called a technology qualification, that it is AI perception and collision avoidance for full autonomous navigation system. This is the work that has been done. It's a world first. I would say the Japanese are the forerunner because it came from a true pain of the Japanese industry, understanding that without adopting new novel technologies, the industry eventually will be in a very difficult place. And I think that it paved the way for regulatory bodies as well to kind of understand what are the benefits of new types of systems. The goal here is, again, to try and mitigate risks related to situational awareness and watchkeeping by reducing the stress from the operator that needs to operate a full commercial ship on his own. It's a single one-man breach, I would say. So taking the heavy lifting work of constant watchkeeping day and night from the operator. And this is some of the work that we've done there. By the way, along the way, it's a 6-year-old collaboration between Orca AI and NYK, the Japanese company. We have been visiting IMO together, talking with flag states together, explaining the pros and cons of it. I even got a board seat at the 1C consortium, which is a consortium of companies working together to add and implement autonomous and AI capabilities in commercial shipping, in Colreg compliant environment towards adoption of AI and autonomy within the IMO as an observer in IMO. So this is a whole work of regulatory compliance, capabilities, training, education to the Japanese market. And now they are talking with us on adding more and more ships that has these capabilities that needs to comply with the local regulations given by Class NK, which is, in my opinion, absolutely amazing because they see it works, they see the benefit, they want to adopt it on more and more ships now.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to see government taking such a long-term view on this stuff and looking for technology to solve kind of big demographic problems. We've had loads of audience questions in, and there's some really interesting ones. So I'm going to dive straight into them. Let's start with one. Paniotis, I'll send this to you. Does sea spray, glare, and heavy exhaust can occasionally trigger false alerts? If the system flags too many non-threatening objects, the crew may begin to ignore or silence it, potentially missing a real threat. What are your thoughts on this?
It's how you use the data. Without a doubt, what I have heard, it might be a reality. However, when you have well-trained bridge team and you introduce it properly, you mitigate this risk. Without a doubt, something new brings risks as well. Our mission is together with the team. It's not only me or the senior management level. We have next to us experienced captains and navigators, asking them at the initial stage what we needed to do at that time. In the present moment, we are confident that we have reached a really acceptable level and improving. However, what I have heard, it's valid, and its management team or its company boarding this vehicle needs to think before implementing and mitigating properly.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. There's Lloyd's Register's done some really good research on
Mhm.
alarm fatigue, and false alerts and all of that sort of thing. And I think it's really important to take a kind of structured approach to rolling out this stuff to avoid that. Alexandros, one for you. Everything nowadays seems to be about ROI. So how do we quantify a return on safety? How do we prove to stakeholders that an accident didn't happen because of our human plus AI investment?
Nick, I think that Dor covered this issue extensively a few minutes ago. It is really, I don't want to say impossible, but it is very difficult to quantify and say that we reduced, due to the ROI improvement, let's say, right? We reduced the cases or incidents, and that was 70%, for example, Orca, since Dor is here, or 20% the master's intuition to follow a certain route, or 10% better training of the crew. It's very difficult to allocate percentages like that. What we see is trends. So we monitor dozens of ships in our company. I'm sure Panagiotis and the other principals do the same in their company, and we identify trends. So we noticed, for example, that when we introduced the situational awareness platform across our fleet, the CPA that we had achieved in the first year, which practically resembles what we did in the past, right? Because no system can fix everything within a year, was, let's say, 30% worse than it is after 3 years today. That means that for sure the implementation of such AI-driven situational awareness platforms helps towards the right direction. Because before utilizing them, the results were not the same, right? Now, how much exactly out of this improvement is due 100% of the system, or to the training that took place in between, or to the individual? It's impossible to allocate. But for sure, we know that without those systems, this trend would not have started. So it's up to anyone to allocate, the specific weight on this ROI improvement. Sorry that I cannot be more specific on that, but you understand. I mean, it's what
No,
I analyzed before.
I think it's a really complex and difficult area, but I think it's worth saying that just implementing a system won't necessarily improve things, but it will give you the tools to actually start to measure things and work out what needs to be improved. And I think that's really important. We've got time for one or two more. Dora, I'll send this one your way. Who ultimately controls and governs operational data generated by AI systems, and how should that responsibility evolve?
So the question is who governs and authorizes? Can you repeat the question?
Who controls and governs the data generated by AI systems?
So the data is, the data belongs to the users, to the clients. They generate the data. Our role here is to help them make the most out of the data. Okay, to make sure that it is analyzed properly, to make sure that it doesn't have any blind spots or missings or anything like that. And I think this is what most data-driven or AI companies today do. Right? You have the sources of the data, usually generated by sensors on board. You have the algorithms that process the data. This is the proficiency of the AI company. And then you need to kind of combine both of them together for value. So it is at the discretion of the users of the system. For example, in this case, Mr. Alexandros' team, Mr. Panayotis' team, to work with the data, highlight where things match or doesn't match, and make sure that they track it, process it, use it properly to improve their businesses. And we are here to help them do that. But it is at their discretion on how much they want to adopt this, how much are they happy to use this and adopt it. And of course, if something is missing, is not understandable, it is our role to help them understand it better. I think it's similar to the same models you see nowadays in larger AI companies like Google or Anthropic or OpenAI, that basically they build the models, but all of the data belongs to the organization. They don't use this data to train their AI algorithm. It was trained on, I would say, public information, and then you have your own use cases. It's very similar governance, I would say.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense whenever you're looking at rolling out those any kind of contract in this space to double check that, but you're right. That is where kind of the industry standard is going. We are unfortunately, we're rapidly running out of time. I was hoping, just as a way of kind of rounding things out, if there was one thing that a member of the audience should take back into their organization and implement straight away to improve navigational resilience, what would it be?
I would say we should stick to the basics here. So the most important thing that any organization must change is not so much the tools. The tools just give us some ammunition in our hands, but what needs to be changed is the culture, what Panagiotis mentioned earlier. So this is where it all starts and where it all ends. Whatever tools might be in people's hands, whether it is Orca AI or any other AI-driven situational awareness platform, unless the culture and DNA, safety culture and safety DNA of the people changes to become towards transparency, and unless the senior leadership is not fully endorsing these new, these new platforms, you will see no results. So I would start with the people and end with the people. This is my piece of advice here.
I think that's a great answer. Panagiotis?
I'm fully aligned with Alexandros' statement. The culture, as I have said, is our behavior when no one is watching. So from our side, let's start watching to our culture. Let's adjust our culture, and transparent and open-minded approaches for us is the future.
And Dawn, final word goes to you.
I think that we can all sleep sound at night knowing that the leadership of maritime industry adopts to the fullest novel technologies, new capabilities to improve resilience of operations and make sure that our goods, what drives our economy, what drives our industries, from LNG to oil and gas to goods, is at the hand of competent people, competent leaders that lead their organizations, be more transparent, be more data driven, highlight excellency and improvements over and over again. And this just shows me again and again that we have very good people at the helm, from their days back at the helm of the ships all the way to the helms of their organizations. I couldn't be more proud and happy to join with the Panagiotis and Alexandros on this panel to gain insights from how they operate their fleets, and of course be a good partner on their journey on becoming more resilient and incorporate AI-driven decisions in their organizations. I would like to thank you, Nick, for moderating this, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dor. It falls on me then to round this conversation out in some way. I put it down to three things. I actually think the technology involved is almost irrelevant. I think the most important three things are culture, which has been talked about a lot, actually getting a strong safety culture in the organization, and that comes from leadership. Second is comms. Whatever technology you're using to achieve these ends, communicate with crew, because that will help to drive those acceptance levels that will help people to see the benefits once this stuff starts to roll out. And then the third is KPIs. Once you've actually got some measures in place, it gets you to a point where you can start to see things change. And yes, the whole question around causality will always be there. Those measures can be very simple, but as you start to see them move, ultimately, that's what takes us towards that ultimate goal that Panagiotis outlined of zero harm. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you to everyone who put questions in the chat. Dor, Panagiotis, and Alexandros, thank you so much for your contributions today. And thank you to the team at Orca for partnering with us on this, and to the team at Digital Ship for putting the whole thing together. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and thank you for being here.
And you, Nick.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.